I'm just gonna say right now, whoever's idea it was to do a Flash versus Arrow and Flash Arrow crossover, God bless you, because this was a genius idea. Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for the second part of the Flash Arrow crossover. This time, it was the Arrow episode. So, this is going to be my review for Arrow, Season 3, Episode 8, The Brave and the Bold. And just like Flash vs. Arrow, I was so looking forward to this episode, especially after last night's amazing start to this crossover. Last night's episode was such an epic way to start it, such an epic feel, and the way they did it, really worked perfectly in The Flash. And I wasn't really sure how they were going to do it in Arrow, because Arrow's a lot more of a serious show. It worked better in The Flash, because The Flash, Arrow's always been more of a serious show. So I wasn't really quite sure how this was all going to work. And overall, how did this end up working? This was better than the first part. It was. Okay, this was better than the first part. It really was that good. It was epic. It was probably more epic than the first part. It was absolutely amazing. It had some amazing character development for Barry and Oliver. Kind of changed Oliver as a person. And I loved this entire episode. I thought it was great. And just like The Flash, this episode basically started off like a typical episode of Arrow. Because we see Oliver and Roy, they approach a house from different sides and call in that they are in position, as does Diggle from the van, and they've tracked the Boomerang killer. Because if you remember in the last episode, of course, that Boomerang killer showed up. And of course, we know that Barry's coming because he planned to work with Oliver on this case. We know that happened because he planned that. So, basically, they've tracked the Boomerang killer, and Oliver notices that the house is rigged to explode. So both archers back up and then trigger the bombs with their arrows, and once it is safe, they enter and begin to search the house, and suddenly they are face-to-face with a SWAT team, and both sides freeze into a standoff. Oliver realizes that the team is not police and deduces that they are in fact Argus, and after an argument with one of the Argus men, the SWAT team leaves with a warning to Arrow to let it go, and Argus will handle this killer. As expected, Oliver has no intention of stopping. So I thought that was an awesome way to start the episode, and I love right away we start literally in the middle of an action scene. Arrow has been doing that a lot, and I think it's really cool that they do that, definitely. So I really enjoy that. So in the Foundry, Felicity looks up information on the killer's latest victim, and Lyla has refused to tell Diggle anything about Argus' investigation, which Oliver is rude about. He doesn't want to tell him anything, really. And this episode, we saw a lot more of Lyla, like a lot more than usual, and I really enjoyed that, because I really like the, there was actually a big thing going on. There was actually a huge thing going on, and I thought that was very well done. I mean, there was a very big thing going on there, and there was some very good character development with them as well. We'll get to that, but then we get to a flashback. Now, my only complaint with this episode, but it's a minor complaint, we did not need these flashbacks in this episode. However, it did make sense why we had them, because we see Amanda Waller. She shows a bound man to Oliver. She needs information from this man to prevent a bombing and expects Oliver to torture the man to extract it. Now, it makes sense why we had these flashbacks, because of something that Barry tells Oliver when he shows up. So Caitlin then shows up in Felicity's office at Palmer Tech, and at first Kane plays his officer offer to help find Sarah's killer, and I love the fact that they're only there because Cisco wanted to see the Arrow Cave. He is slowly becoming my favorite character. Just, he's so funny, and he brings so much to the show, especially since the episode was very, very dark. Caitlin and Cisco show up, it's like hilarious, and you have that tone of the Flash there, which I love, and Felicity warns them not to call it the Arrow Cave. Of course, Cisco is referring to, like, Batman, things like that. I love that Cisco, refers to Batman, because, again, it really shows how much Oliver is like Batman, which I think is pretty awesome, the way they always talk about that. I think it's pretty awesome the way they did that, and just, it was so funny to watch that, definitely. Just the way they showed up. I mean, that was their reason. It's just that I want to see the Arrow Cave. There wasn't, like, really that much of a reason except for that, so I thought that was definitely very funny. So Diggle follows Lyla into Argus as she continues to deflect his questions about the Boomerang killer, and not long after, the Boomerang killer uses one of his victims' IDs to enter Argus, and the slaughter begins. So Argus goes into lockdown, and Diggle calls for Oliver to help. Lyla gives Diggle a gun, and they join the fight. By the way, I love the chemistry between Diggle and Lyla in this episode. They have this long-running joke of every time he called her sweetie, he wants her to help. He wants her to help him. I thought that was great that they kept saying that. They kept saying in the episode, but it wasn't, like, overly done. It was cute. It was kind of cheesy, but I thought it was well done. I enjoyed it overall. I mean, I can understand if you thought it was cheesy, but I thought it was really well done. I thought it was actually, I really like the stuff with Diggle and Lyla, because they've been playing it off very comedically. They've definitely been playing these two off very comedic, and we don't really see a comedic side of Diggle and Lyla. We don't really see this comedic side of Diggle very often, but we've been seeing it a lot more lately, and I like it. I like this comedic side of them. I didn't think we'd see that, but I definitely like it. I like the direction they're heading with it, and I think it's working, so I definitely enjoy that a lot. So then Thea's walking outside. I thought this was this is how we're introduced to the Flash, because Thea's walking outside, talking to Chase on her cell phone, and then out of nowhere, Barry shows up. He's arrived in Starling City, and I love the way he just, like, zooms through, and she's like, what just happened? I thought that was really funny. I thought that was definitely a really funny way to do that. It kind of mirrored Oliver's epic introduction on Arrow, but this was done in a more funnier way. So Oliver and Roy get to Argus and join the fight, but Barry, just like Oliver, rescues him. He saves the day, but the Boomerang killer escapes. So Oliver demands answers from Lyla, who finally gives them his real name, which is Digger Harkness, and he was a member of the Suicide Squad. So a mission went badly, and basically Amanda was out, and Lyla made the decision to terminate the members of the squad. And somehow Harkness somehow survived, and Oliver offers Lyla protection. So at the foundry, Barry's using I thought this was just hilarious what happened here. He goes to the Arrow Cave. I'm going to call it the Arrow Cave because that's what Cisco called it. He goes to the foundry, basically, and what happens is when he goes to the foundry, he ends up, like, speeding out, and he comes back and he has a plate of sushi. Oh my god, that was so funny. I thought that was hilarious. So he's using the salmon ladder at top speed, and Cisco tries next, but can't even manage to pull up, and he comes back, as I said, with the sushi and his mask off, and Lyla and Diggle show up with a shattered boomerang. And assuming, basically Barry thought that Diggle told Lyla about him, and we find out that Diggle did not tell Lyla because he doesn't trust Barry. And I thought that was hilarious that Diggle does not trust Barry. Why would you not trust Barry? I find that hilarious that we found that out in this episode. That was definitely information that I didn't think we find out, and just the way we found that out was very, very funny. And again, I love the way they're portraying him in a more comedic way. I definitely hope they keep doing that because it's really working. So Lyla now knows the identity of the Flash, and Oliver pulls Barry aside and tries to convince him to go home. But Barry wants to help and promises he has to take the advice Oliver recently gave him in Central City. Of course, the advice that Oliver gave him was, give up, you're not going to end up with Iris. So Oliver finally agrees that Barry can help, but they are doing things Oliver's way. Because, of course, the last time they did this, it didn't end up working. They ended up clashing, and Oliver doesn't want that to happen again. So they're doing this Oliver's way. And Barry immediately proves his worth by reassembling the Boomerang in seconds. And Cisco and Caitlin work on the Boomerang and recognize the signatures of Klaus Marcos. Not Klaus from the originals, okay? That's Monday Nights. Not that Klaus, and not Marcos from the Vampire Diaries. Those are two completely different shows. But this was a guy that, Detective Lance arrested. So, at the police station, we briefly see a scene of Laurel and her father. I like that they tried to fit in some, Arrow cameos, even though they weren't a central part of the story. I like that they were in there because they are important, and this is the second to last episode of the, first half of the season, so we do need to get some stuff with them. What I also liked about this episode, though, was that, it's, as I said, it's been a year since Barry was introduced on Arrow, so I definitely really enjoyed that. So Laurel and Captain Lance are once more arguing about their shared cases, and Barry and Oliver show up and greet them, and Laurel asks Oliver about his trip to Central City. And she knows about it, and Lance shares that Marcos was, arrested for identity theft and has ties to the Russian mob. So I also love that he recognized who Barry was. I thought that was great. So the team goes to find Marcos, but while Oliver checks on Diggle, Barry ties up all the mobsters, then grabs Marcos, and Oliver shoots Marcos, trying to torture information about Harkness out of him. And this is when the episode started to get really, really amazing. I mean, so the episode was kind of like a standard Arrow episode, but this is when it got really awesome, because Barry's horrified by this. He had no idea that Oliver tortures people. Marcus hands over an encrypted cell phone, and Barry delivers Marcos right to Lance's office. And Barry is furious about Oliver's methods. He confronts him about it. Basically, he wanted him to, I agree with what Barry is saying to Oliver. I definitely agree with this. Basically, he says to Oliver that he understands that he is upset about Sarah's killer. He saw his mother dying from him too, and so did Oliver. But they deal with things very differently. Oliver handles things in a much more, raging way, sort of doesn't really like to show his sadness and everything, and Barry said he should, and honestly, this scene really made me think that that this episode, you're really rooting for Barry. Like, we're rooting for Barry here. Barry is the one that is saying the right stuff to Oliver. I agree what he's saying when he tells Oliver, you know what? You don't need to be so enraged about everything all the time. Think about it. Oliver's always pissed about something. He always has that attitude like he's pissed off, and I agree with what Barry is saying there. So I thought that was definitely very good advice that Barry gave to Oliver. I thought that was very well done. So back at the foundry, Lyla asks Oliver about Barry, and she understands what it's like to have to make hard decisions for the greater good and not be able to make others understand. She can see that the two of them are not really getting along. And Felicity easily hacks the Argus spy satellite to find Harkness using info from the cell they collected. Cisco says he can track the signal from his phone. Oh, I also love that he, how Cisco always names the metahumans? Well, he names Captain Boomerang. I mean, he calls him Kaboom Boomerang. I thought that was great. And Barry's just like, no, that's not one of your best ones. I love that they do that. It's so funny, and I love that they incorporate that on Arrow. That's one of the things I love about Cisco. It's just how funny he is. So he says he can track this thing over on his phone. So he joins Oliver, Barry, Roy, and Diggle in hunting Harkness down. So we go back to a flashback, and Oliver takes his bow and arrow in his hand, trying to psych himself up to torture the prisoner. And now makes sense why we're seeing this, because of course Barry's upset that he's torturing people. And the prisoner doesn't think that Oliver's going to torture him, and he's right. A bomb explodes in a nearby building before Oliver can do anything. So then we get back to the present. In the van, Cisco's chatting with Diggle and Roy. It's a mostly one-side conversation, and Cisco admits that Barry can run on water, and I thought that was interesting when we found that out. And Cisco says that he thinks superpowers are given out for people to deal with the craziness of the world, and I agree with what he's saying. And I love that Cisco's just like, it's pretty awesome. It is pretty fucking awesome, definitely. And, Diggle and Roy are just staring at him like, oh my god, what are you talking about? I love that. It really shows the contrast between the Flash and Arrow. Arrow's so much more mature than The Flash, but The Flash is just a fun show, and that's what I love about The Flash. That's a fun show, and I love that the show is showing that, definitely. They really did a great job with that. Arrow can be fun sometimes, but between the two shows, Arrow is the darker show. So Oliver enters a bar, followed by Barry, and things go south right away, because Oliver saves Barry, Arsenal, Roy and Diggle follow inside, leaving Cisco in the van. They learn that Marcos was paid to give Oliver the phone and was all a trick. And Harkness uses the phone to find the foundry where he attacks the girls. Lyla quickly starts grabbing weapons to defend Caitlin and Felicity, and after a short fight, Harkness manages to get Lyla in the chest with a boomerang, and Felicity throws an explosive at Harkness, who escapes, and Felicity and Caitlin hurry to see if they can save Lyla, and I honestly thought they were going to kill off Lyla. I really did. The guys return, Barry hurries Lyla to the hospital, and as I said, I kind of felt like they were going to kill off Lyla. They were like this close. It really seemed like they were going to do that, but we'll talk about what ended up happening there. We go back to the flashbacks, and we see that Amanda meets up with Bear. We go back to the flashbacks, and basically, Amanda meets up with Oliver as they examine the wreckage. He's distressed. She does not help at matters at first. Eventually, she talks to him about extreme words he echoes later. She tells him that torture is an art, and I thought that was good, what she said to him. So Roy, Felicity, and Cisco share a table at Verdant where Thea serves them, and Cisco has a crush on Thea, which I thought was funny. He asks the other two who she is, but upon hearing she is Oliver's sister and Roy's ex, he gives up. He's like, I'm not doing this. He's obviously knows that if he were to flirt with Thea, they would not be happy. So Caitlin arrives to update them on Lyla's condition. Cisco and Caitlin are stunned by what they have seen in Starling City. It was, pretty much, to them, it was pretty, and it makes sense why they're so stunned, because it really goes with what Oliver said to Barry, that this is not, Central City. Starling City is much different, because of the fact that Starling City is a much more darker place. It has vigilantes, and now it's really showing how serious it's going to get. So my question is, do you guys think The Flash is going to get more serious? They did show a very dark promo for The Flash, so I definitely feel that The Flash is going to be a little bit more serious. I definitely think this is going to change the tone of The Flash, sort of, in my opinion. So Oliver's in the Foundry, blaming himself for what happened to Lyla, and Barry tells Oliver that's not his fault. Oliver confesses that he's willing to do what's ugly, but he loses a piece of Oliver every time, and he thinks to the point that he's only the Arrow. Again, this season, he's having a hard time being Oliver and the Arrow, and Barry sees it differently. He tells Oliver that his humanity is what saved him. And Felicity interrupts because they found Harkness. And in a subway station, Oliver and Barry go to confront Harkness, who tells them that he planted 5 bombs around the city. They have 90 seconds, and Barry hurries off to deal with the bombs while Oliver stays to fight. And this was an awesome scene, because Barry finds the bomb, talks to Felicity, Caitlin, Cisco, and Roy about what he sees, and they realize they need to defuse all 5 bombs the exact same second, or they will all go off. And in the meantime, Oliver's managing to use arrows to pin Harkness to a pillar, and one by one, Barry grabs his friends from the Foundry, drops them off with a bomb. Once all 5 of them are there at their respective bombs, they count to 3, cut wires, it works. That's one of the most awesome scenes they've done with Barry so far. I gotta say. That was an awesome scene. Love what they did there. Just awesome stuff there. So, Barry returns to the subway station in time to hear Harkness call Oliver weak, and Oliver disagrees and references his humanity. And I gotta say, Harkness was definitely a very good villain, okay? He definitely was a very good villain. I like what he contributed to the show. I thought he was definitely a very menacing villain. He really did what a good villain should do. Some people have stated that this crossover didn't have a set villain, and it really did. Captain Boomerang really was the villain. Yes, we had that bank robber guy, who that metahuman, the bank robber metahuman, but this was the real villain, was Captain Boomerang. That is what got Oliver to Central City in the first place. So, Diggle sits by Lyla's hospital bed. Lyla wakes up, and Diggle says, Diggle calls her sweetie, and she says, you only call me sweetie when you want something from me. And we find out that Diggle's proposing marriage. So she accepts, and it makes sense why they did that, because the whole episode, they were sort of foreshadowing that those two were going to get married, just because every time a character from The Flash saw them, they thought that they were married. So I thought that was very funny, and I love that they're getting married. I think that's great. It's a great twist for Diggle. I definitely really enjoy that, and Diggle really is having a great arc this season. I definitely think he's having a lot of really good stuff to do, and I love where they're heading with this. So that was really fun. So at the Foundry, Caitlin is pretty sure she can get results from the arrows that killed Sarah, and Oliver tells everyone that Harkness is now sharing a cell with Slade, and he then reveals that he had Felicity make a station for Barry's Flash things in the Foundry, and I thought this was great, because it's referencing that there's going to be another crossover, which makes me so happy, because this is such an awesome crossover. It really was. It made both shows more interesting. It changed some things for the shows. It added humor to Arrow. It added a dark side to The Flash. I love that they reference that, because I want another crossover. I mean, really, this episode makes you, really want another crossover, ASAP. I really do. I don't know when, but probably sometime next year, or maybe even the mid-season, do a crossover, because they reference that there's going to be another one. So in the future, Team Flash also has a gift for, Team Flash also has a gift for Oliver. And it's a new Kevlar jacket, green hood attached. And, he doesn't know, he doesn't really want it. Cisco says he doesn't know if he wants it because it's sentimental to him. So, Oliver doesn't really want it, but then I love the way they ended. Basically Oliver says, we have some unfinished business to do. And Caitlin's like, are you two going to punch each other? I thought that was really funny. So, one last flashback. Amanda offers Oliver a second chance for the new prisoner, someone who works for China White. This time, Oliver does not hesitate to begin torturing his victim. He tortures this person. He doesn't care. He tortures them. So, Barry and Oliver are walking together, and I love the way this scene ended. This was great, because it really shows how great these two work together. Yes, they don't really, get along, but I really liked the way this scene went. I thought this was definitely very, very funny, in my opinion. I really enjoyed it because of that. I thought it was definitely very funny. So, basically, Oliver wants to find out once more, because this was the big question, of course. They showed a thing in the promo about this, and I'm like, why are you showing this? What does this have to do with anything? And it makes sense, because he wants to find out, of course, the big question, which is what we were all wondering, who would win a fight between them once and for all, him or Barry, and they argue until they arrive at the space Oliver is chosen for this fight, and just as they're about to begin their own version of, basically, I love the way it ends. Oliver's throwing arrows, Barry's catching them, and that's how it ends. And that was an awesome way to end this episode. Awesome stuff there. I loved everything about this crossover. I thought it was really, really awesome, honestly. It was better than the first episode, and I'm going to talk about why. Because this episode incorporated humor. Now, I know what you guys are saying. This episode contributed nothing to Arrow. It didn't further the plot or anything. There was no Ray Palmer, things like that. Okay, yes, there was no Ray Palmer. Did I really miss Ray Palmer? No. I didn't, okay, because he didn't need to be in this episode. He didn't need to be in this episode because this episode was all about this case and sort of can Barry and Oliver work well together, and this episode answered that question. It showed that, yes, they can work well together. They just need to, I think Oliver is going to sort of, take Barry's advice to heart, definitely. And what I like about the show is doing is that this is not just a random crossover that they're never going to discuss again. They will definitely discuss these things again. Especially something when it comes to Oliver being, torturing people. I definitely think Oliver is going to think about this more because this is something that, Barry was a close ally to him. He's trusted Barry. He works well with Barry. And, I think that definitely this is showing that Oliver is definitely going to listen to Barry. I love seeing the two of them work together. That was great. Cisco and Caitlin really made the episode very funny. I thought that was really funny to watch. Do you think that the Flash is going to be darker now, sort of, now that Cisco and Caitlin know the dark undertones of Starling City? I do think if they come back to Starling City, they're not going to... I do think if, Barry does come back, Cisco and Caitlin will not be present. They do not like the dark undertones of Starling City. They just don't. What's going to happen with Diggle and Lyla? This is very sudden, but it makes sense why, and I like that they're doing this because it's making Diggle a more interesting character. Diggle is a better character now, honestly. I really do love where they're heading with this character. He's very, very funny now. He's a fun character, and I like that definitely. I thought that was very well done. If they do another crossover, what should they do? Now, my only thing with this crossover, and I agree with what people are saying, they should have had Captain Boomerang in Flash vs. Arrow, just so we had a crossover villain. Our main villain was I'd say our main villain was actually both of them. This was not about the villain. Both of these episodes, they didn't really focus on the case. Arrow more than the Flash, but they were more about, can these two work well together? Can these two, find some sort of common ground, even though they work very differently, can they work well together? And this episode said that, yeah, they can work well together. And I really enjoyed that this episode answered that question, because that's something we've all been really wanting to know, is can they work well together? And yes, they can, definitely. Let's talk about... What else is there to talk about? I'm trying to think if there is anything else to think about. Let's talk about the finale. Basically, the plot of the finale is going to be amazing. It's basically going to be Oliver and Ra's al Ghul basically fighting. There's going to be really awesome fight scene between them. And it's basically going to be because he gives him, I believe 24 hours to find Sarah's killer. So that's really big. And, now, I honestly feel like they should have used a little bit more of that in Arrow, but they didn't because this was sort of just a more about how these two work well together, and I definitely can't wait for the next crossover, because this episode confirms that there's going to be a next crossover. As I said, the episode shows that, yes, there's going to be another crossover, so I'm very happy about that. Let me know what you guys think of there being another crossover, and also the villain was very well done. I really enjoyed that. Flashbacks were actually really good in this episode. I haven't really been into the flashbacks this season, but I think the flashbacks were really good here. I think this is sort of trying to show Oliver's history with torture. I think that's what they're going to start to show here. And I really like that. One of the things, let me talk about what I really like this crossover did. One of the things that this crossover did is it really further developed Barry and Oliver. It really showed the difference between them and sort of their strengths and their weaknesses. Barry is a strength in the sense that he doesn't take everything as seriously as he should. Yes, he does take things seriously, but he's more of a fun-loving guy. Oliver's too serious, though. Oliver, sometimes needs to kind of loosen up and things like that. And we see that he has, the arrow's kind of becoming his ego, it seems. Because he even said that he's starting to, have more motives of the arrow than he is of the than he is of Oliver. And he has definitely a big ego there. So I think that's definitely something that I'm really enjoying that the show, showed definitely. I thought that was very well done. It also furthered the plot of course, I do think if Oliver goes back to Central City, he will definitely confront Wells. We didn't really see anything with that in this episode, but there is that still. Now, the only thing that we did not see in this episode, and I'm wondering if we're actually going to see this, or when they're actually going to show this, is the thing with Oliver and that girl that he used to date. We didn't, that he had the child with. Nothing with that in this episode. Now, I thought we were going to get something with that in this episode, but we got nothing with it. And I think that's because of the fact that it wasn't time, and the only reason we saw that is because maybe that girl's in Star City now, and she's not in, now maybe that girl's in Central City, and she's not in Starling City. So if that's true, then Oliver is definitely going to come back to Star City. Now, I think that is true, because we didn't see this girl on Arrow at all, so I have no idea what that's really trying to show, but they made it seem like a huge thing, and it wasn't as big as a thing as it should have been, but I definitely think they're going to fix that up. Overall, guys, I loved this crossover. Honestly, guys, you can think of this as, I'd say you can think of this in one episode, but you really can because it was two separate episodes. But it was really awesome to watch. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. What did you think of Barry, Caitlin, and Cisco being on? I thought they contributed a lot to the show. I know some of you are probably going to say they made the show stupid or whatever. I thought they made the show really, really fun, definitely. I really loved what they did with this episode. I thought it was definitely really fun that they were on the show. What did you think of what Barry said to Oliver? Do you think Oliver's really going to think about what he said? I definitely think Oliver is going to take a second. He's going to think, wait a second. Maybe I do need to sort of tone down as the Arrow. Maybe I'm going to be more like Oliver and less like the Arrow. What do you think this is going to do in terms of Oliver and Felicity, Oliver and Felicity sort of talked about that a little bit. Do you think we're going to see anything with that? I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there. Do you think that The Flash is going to be a darker show now? I think this has definitely changed Barry, especially Cisco and Caitlin. This has definitely changed them a lot. We'll have to see what happens there. And Diggle and Lyla, I don't know how this marriage is going to work. Do you think they're actually going to stick with it? I don't know. I see a lot of chemistry for them. I see no, problems with them or anything, so I could see this working. Also, Laurel needs to just really tell Captain Lance, what actually happened with Sarah. I definitely feel she's going to tell him the next episode, but we didn't really get anything with that. We got one small thing with her, and that was fine that we got that small thing with Laurel because it didn't really need to be in the episode. But that's in my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw of this crossover in general. This was probably one of the most epic crossovers I've ever seen in my life. I loved every minute of it. I loved pretty much everything. It was a very good, solid 4 hours of television. It was awesome to watch. Not 4 hours, but you know what I mean, 2 hours. Someone said it was 4 hours. I don't know why I said 4 hours. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for tonight's episode of American Horror Story Freak Show, which I'm definitely looking forward to. So I will see you guys for that. And I'm really upset this crossover is over because now we're going back to standard Flash and Arrow, and I wish that we could continue the crossover. But are you guys hyped for the next crossover? I definitely feel there's going to be another one. I also feel that they should do, like, little crossovers. Like, maybe have Oliver come to Star City, but not have it a full-on crossover. Just have him come to Star City. Maybe have him and Barry work on a case together. Or have Felicity come back. Or have Diggle join. I'd like to see those little things happen. And I definitely, really like what they did with that, and because I love seeing Caitlin and Felicity work together. I love seeing Diggle and Cisco. They're very much the same type of character. Diggle's the fun guy and Cisco's the fun guy. I like seeing Barry and Oliver work together. I like seeing these things. I want to see Oliver confront Wells. So I want to see them do little crossovers here and there. If they want to do a big one again, wait till next season, but if they want to do little ones here and there, I'm going to be very happy with that, because I like to see them do little crossovers, because it's going to really make me love both of these shows more. And this crossover really has made me love both of these shows more. But I'll see you guys in my next video. Okay, bye.